From Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson with you, and here's what's ahead. K-State's Ignacio Ciampitti will look at the timing of corn planting in Kansas and what he advises you growers to rely upon as the signal to roll the planter, the main one being soil temperature, which in large part determines stand uniformity. Also today, the latest edition of FSA Coffee Talk. From the Farm Service Agency, David Schemm will outline the customer service measures that local FSA offices have implemented for the duration of the coronavirus situation. Further ahead, K-State's Charlie Lee reports this week on a new study of the cost-effectiveness of employing guardian dogs to protect livestock from predators. All that and more right here on Agriculture Today.
Make hand washing a healthy habit everywhere you go. Wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds, especially after going to the bathroom, before, during, and after preparing food, and before eating. If soap and water aren't available, use a hand sanitizer that has at least 60% alcohol. Life is better with clean hands. A message from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
You're tuned in to Agriculture Today. Thanks for being along with us on this Tuesday. We are encroaching on corn planting time in Kansas, but what is the optimum time to seed that crop? It's an annual question, and there are variables that always have to be considered. We're going to go over those now with our guest, Ignacio Ciampitti. He's a crop production and cropping systems specialist with K-State Research and Extension. Ignacio, producers may well be itching to get something done out there, and corn seeding is the first major crop of the spring to go in. But you are expressing caution to those producers about planting too early, right?
Yeah, we're trying to make sure that we are looking at some of the main factors. And then one of the most critical factors for planting corn is temperature and soil moisture. So those are the two main critical factors. And then we have many guys that are really wanting to jump and start planting right now. Temperatures are not quite there. If we look at temperatures in many places, I mean, on moisture, we are in a very, very good shape, this year. But still, as always, things can change very quickly.
And in fact, there's moisture to excess in some places, which will, by the nature of it, delay planting anyway.
Yeah, and that's one of the main issues. Is we have a very mild start in many situations. When you look at their temperatures in the last couple of weeks, and then we have a couple of days in just very recently that the temperatures were feeling that we were getting close to mid-April. And everyone was like, okay, this is an opportunity to start planting. I will say, if you look at the forecast in the next coming 10 days, things are fluctuating, going up and down.
Right.
And then the issue that we might face is that corn is one of the most expensive seed costs. And then we need to be very, very careful to make sure that we do a very good job on planting corn. One of the most important factors when we are looking at corn planting is the uniformity. And then having uniform plants is something that we'll be potentially discussing as one of the most critical factors for success in corn yields.
And what are those drivers of corn uniformity? One of them, and you put out an article on this in the E-Update recently, would definitely be soil temperature.
Yeah, if you look at all the different summer crops, I would say that corn is by far one of the main ones that we should be protecting and making sure that we do an excellent job for planting. And then if you look at excellent or close to perfect, if we want to go in that direction, planting conditions, temperature, second one, moisture. We need to also discuss, and we can bring it back in the conversation before the end of this interview, is potential impacts of freeze damage. Because even if we plant too early, then we might be having some impacts on freeze late in the season. So let's start with optimal soil temperature. So in many situations, the minimum soil temperature for corn and for emergence is 50 degrees, okay, at 2-inch. One of the main potential issues is that, again, if we express and if you look at the forecast in the next 10 days, we might probably start seeing that fluctuation on temperature. So even if today conditions are perfect, or even if I get, which I think that is at least the one that I'm more inclined to use, 55 degrees, a 2-inch soil temperature for improving uniformity, asynchrony of emergence and increasing the probability of getting more plants, I would say that even in those scenarios, we need to start looking at that forecast to make sure that we take into the consideration potential impacts of any cold front that is coming in the next 10 days. And the second part is that even if we get our corn planted in an excellent shape in terms of temperature, that corn will take to germinate just a few hours, if we have enough moisture. But for emergence out of the ground, it might take in some situations between 20 and 21 days based on these temperature conditions. So these put us, even if I have a very late planted in March or early April, it put us all the way to late April. If you compare the similar situation with someone that was just planted at that time when the first planting date, the earlier one, was coming up, I would say that the difference between those two, even when you think that you might have a difference of 3 weeks, 21 or 25 days, you might detect that then that second planting date on late April will take only 7 to 10 days to come up. And then at the end of the day, the difference between those two planting times, it might be only just 10 days. And I want to emphasize this point because if we're looking for high-yielding corn, and if we're looking for increasing, productivity and thinking about more than 200 bushels, 250 bushels, some of the guys working in a high-yielding environment and the irrigation, then each day counts for increasing the yields. But for everyone else, when we are looking at everyone else looking at just making a very good corn, it's 150 bushels, or even guys on 100 bushels, our planting window for corn is very extended. It's not something that we have only just 3 or 4 weeks from mid-April to first week of May. In many situations, last year was an excellent example of situations that we finished planting even later on, and then we got, in some cases, very good corn yields. And then the uniformity is one of the main impacts. For that late planting time, 7 to 10 days for those plants to come up, and they will be, most of those plants coming up all at this very similar time, very uniformly. For those situations that we are planting today or early April, most of the times one of the potential issues that we face is the lack of uniformity on soil temperatures because of difference in moisture, difference in residue cover, and then the impact at the end of the day is that we might see plants coming very quickly, and we might see part of the stand, many other plants that are quite behind. And for those plants that are behind, many times those plants, if they are 2 or 3 weeks behind, they might not even produce ears. Basically, we're saying that uniformity is a huge factor for corn yields, and if the stand is not uniform, many of those plants will never produce yield.
So again, that 55 degrees is pivotal here as far as soil temperature, but you talked of something else a little bit ago, and we do want to come back to that, Ignacio, and that is the impact potentially of a hard freeze on corn. Corn does not like cold weather when it emerges from the ground. In many parts of Kansas, we're several weeks away from the last chance for a freeze.
Yeah, and if you look at, we have information that we put together, in our e-update. And one of the most relevant things that we touch base in many situations is that injury in corn is a big issue when we are basically, plants are usually beyond the B5, B6 stage. Because in those moments when the plants already have 5 to 6 leaves, the growing point is about the soil surface. And that's the difference between impacting the plants that are a little bit advanced versus impacting plants that are very young. The second point is, if you look at that information, so we have a map showing that the average last spring freeze, which usually we tend to use the 32 Fahrenheit temperature, kind of the average last day for spring freeze. and then it changed dramatically. In some situations, it goes from early April in Southeast all the way to early May in Northwest corner. So you see that we have almost a month, and then the range goes in that direction, which means that even for the guys in Southeast that are planting corn at this point, there is still some probability that they could be impacted by late spring freeze. That usually could come in some situations. I mean, it could come even until around mid-April. For those guys that are in the other corner, the opposite side, the northwest corner, usually they will delay plant. They will start in many situations in the first week of May or before. For those guys that start before, there is still a probability of a last spring freeze that is around the first week of May, okay? And then these are some ideas on scenarios that if we plant it before those dates, most likely we might see an impact on a hard freeze that usually will be, depending on how low the temperature gets and the intensity and the duration of that low temperature, it usually is even more severe under dry conditions, which is not the case at this point. But we will see potentially problems of number of plants and basically mortality. So some of these plants are not coming up.
So that information in hand, producers can follow along, Ignacio, on the soil temperature trends on the Mesonet website out of the Weather Data Library at K-State. That is a good way to track where we are in as far as optimum corn planting time, is it not?
Yes, that would be an excellent situation. There is always a level of risk, and then we need to, the producer should know about the risk, and they should play on a level of risk that they will feel comfortable in order to make those decisions.
We'd also point you in the direction of this article in the E-Update series out of Agronomy at K-State, posted last Friday on optimum planting dates for corn. And we are going to be full bore into the growing season soon enough, Ignacio, so we'll have you back and talk more about getting those row crops started. Appreciate your time right here.
Thanks, Eric, for the invitation, as always.
He is Ignacio Ciampitti, Crop Production Cropping Systems Specialist with K-State Research and Extension. This is Agriculture Today.
Did you eat today? Thank a farmer. A way to get more involved in agriculture is through 4-H and FFA. Through 4-H and FFA, we have been given multiple opportunities to grow as leaders and learn more about agriculture.
You can learn skills related to jobs, public speaking skills, and you get the opportunity to travel around the country and meet new people.
If you want more information about getting more involved in 4-H and FFA, visit them on their websites at kansasffa.org and kansas4h.org.
Agriculture Today continues on the K-State Radio Network, and it's around to our feature every other week that we call FSA Coffee Talk, where we visit with personnel from the Farm Service Agency State Office about what's going on with USDA programs here in the state of Kansas. And we're talking now with the State Director of the FSA, David Schemm. David, it has been an unusual time, to say the very least, here lately, and we wanted to touch upon that first here. For you at the FSA have made adjustments in how you're working with producers in the wake of the coronavirus situation, correct?
Absolutely, Eric. Yeah, like you said, it's kind of unprecedented times that we're dealing with right now. And, you know, obviously the coronavirus has a lot of people with concern. But the one thing, and, you know, I think all of our producers out there know as well, is that they are absolutely critical. Their mission is essential for them to be able to provide food, fuel, fiber for all of our people across this country. And FSA is part of that group that helps to support those producers out there, are also mission essential personnel. So within that scope that has been directed to us by the Department of Justice as being mission essential, we're out there, and our offices are still serving producers. We're not doing it in person, though. We're continuing to do it by phone, by email, regular mail, however it is we need to do it. But we're still there trying to help producers with a lot of the programs going on now.
Very good. So the protocol here is for a producer, if they need to work with their USDA Service Center personnel, schedule a phone appointment, much as they would an in-person appointment?
That is exactly right, Eric. Call into that office and get a phone appointment scheduled with them. we're trying to be, again, considerate. We know we've got a lot of our customers, all our producers out there that can be in that what would be deemed as a high-risk category, either dealing with possibly health issues or older people. We also have our own employees. So we're doing that, practicing that social distancing, limiting the number of people we have in the offices. So most of our offices have either only one or two people that are actually inside the office. So they're pretty busy manning that phone right now. So call into the office. If you don't get a live person right away, please leave a voicemail. They'll get back to you just as quick as they possibly can and help the producers out.
Excellent. And it would be appropriate as well to note that the USDA does have a number of its informational services online, so producers could utilize those pathways to information as well.
Absolutely. With our farmers.gov website, it's a great starting point for our producers out there to be able to go to, access the latest, most current information. I know they're busy right now, even making sure that website is updated with as much current information as possible, whether it might be your local service center phone number or programs, sign-ups that are going on right now. So very, very true, Eric. That's an excellent resource for our producers to be able to tap into.
And if you didn't catch it, producers, that's farmers.gov. That's simple, farmers.gov. Well, back to more of a normal line of business here, David, if we might. The enrollment period for USDA programs under the ARC or PLC options has concluded for 2019 production. There's still some time for those who would like to enroll in 2020. But you can provide us an update on that initial enrollment, you say.
Yeah, like you noted, the initial sign-up for 2019 ended back here on March the 16th. I know some of our offices are out there are finishing up those appointments and getting producers signed up that signed up before that deadline. But we'll be wrapping those up here shortly, here by next week, and be able to have all those in. Like you noted, 2020 sign up for that ends June 30th here. But even with the challenging times, and even now the challenging times we have, our offices across the state have just done a very incredible job, Eric, getting producers signed up. Kansas actually, at this point, has already enrolled over 102,000 contracts. We are running right at 103% of what the 2018 enrollment was. So we've already gone through and processed a lot of those ARC PLC enrollments across the state for producers and getting them signed up.
Any preliminary breakdown on ARC and PLC? Which one was favored by producers the most, or is it too early to make that call?
Well, I've definitely been looking at those numbers, Eric, and, I think it's kind of as expected by a lot of people. We definitely have seen the PLC enrollment be higher. But, again, as we finish wrapping up, we'll see where those final numbers coming up. But right now, it looks like PLC was tending to be the more popular choice for our producers out there. Again, obviously, there's a little bit of a breakdown when you got in the difference between it being soybean or corn or wheat enrollment between the ARC and PLC contracts.
Couple of other items briefly here. The Grassland CRP enrollment. What's the status there?
Well, sign-up began on March 16th, and, it's an opportunity for producers to enroll grasslands and receive an annual rental payment as well as up to 50% cost share on conservation practices for those producers who deemed to enroll grasslands acres up into the Grassland CRP program. So a great opportunity. I would encourage producers that as they are able to, call up and talk to your local office to see whether or not you would qualify. We have until May 15th again for the enrollment on that. But we're here to work with our producers. As we noted earlier in the earlier topic of discussion, it's a challenging time as we try to work through this coronavirus impact on all of us. And we know that obviously our offices are being challenged trying to continue to serve producers. So please be patient with our offices as they get back to you and answer your questions and start to work with you should you desire to enroll into the program. And
briefly, the qualifiers for the Grassland CRP, it's fairly straightforward as far as being eligible?
Yeah, it is very straightforward. There's a couple of basic principles. as far as having to ban in grass for at least 2 years, having seeded into some type of grass cover for at least 2 years. So it's pretty straightforward. Again, there's a few more specifics with the program there. Go again to that farmers.gov site, look at the program. Hopefully that'll be able to answer your questions. And obviously, I know, call into the local office if you don't get all your questions answered on that, and they'll be able to help you with that, along with the program that just opened up today, and I think we might talk about a little bit too, is WIP Plus.
Yes, by all means. That is an aid program for producers who have endured hardships, stands for Wildfire Hurricane Indemnity Program, but it canvasses a great deal more than just those two unfortunate events. You might remind us for whom that's set up.
Well, that program got expanded just a little bit originally. WIP was originally opened up to address the hurricane situation that occurred back in 17 and 18 in the southeast part of the U.S. It was later expanded to address the flooding issue that occurred in the Midwest this past spring. And then here at the end of this last year, Congress approved some additional dollars and expanded the program to now include areas that were affected with either a D3 or D4 drought during 2018 or 2019, and also for those areas that were impacted by excessive moisture. There's also a component with it of crop quality loss that was added into the program. Again, that sign-up actually just opened up. There's not been a deadline set with it yet, Eric, as far as the enrollment period here. We are still trying to work through, again, as we were trying to roll out some of this program and get the additional training to our people out there, obviously have become impacted by this virus. So we're still getting more additional details coming down from this program, and it will be a program out there available for our producers. A lot of the specifics, again, we're still getting all those details worked out. A sign-up did occur. I would definitely suggest for our producers that think that drought or possibly excessive moisture or maybe even crop quality loss affected them to definitely go to that farmers.gov site, look at the WIP Plus, see if it applies to you. If you have some additional questions, again, like I just said with the other ones, give a call into our offices there and talk with them to see what additional information they can provide them.
Very well. Once more, WIP Plus is open for business. And lastly, to reiterate what you've been saying multiple times, David, the lines of communication are open for producers. They need to make that phone call to their local FSA personnel to keep the ball rolling on all of these matters.
Absolutely. As we're their partners and helping to make sure we keep this nation functioning and strong, we're part of that essential delivery program for them out there. And our offices are open to do business with them and help to serve our producers out there as they continue to feed our nation.
Good to hear from you again, and the best in pushing things forward, even in these unusual adverse times. We appreciate the comments and the information, David.
Thank you, Eric.
He's the state director of the Farm Service Agency here in Kansas. That's David Schemm on the latest FSA Coffee Talk here on Agriculture Today. Now we'll stand aside for a few minutes, and when we come back, today's agricultural news headlines, this week's edition of Milk Lines with K-State's Mike Brook, and our weekly chat with K-State's Charlie Lee on wildlife management. All still to come here on the K-State Radio Network.
Did you know every Kansas farmer feeds 128 plus people?
Kansas farmers are hard workers, dependable, authentic, and sensitive.
Not only do farmers put food on your table, but they put clothes on your back and fuel in your car.
For more information about Kansas farmers, visit K-State Research and Extension online or stop by your local extension office. This message has been brought to you by the K-State Animal Sciences Leadership Academy participants.
Broadcasting from the campus of Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson with you. Today's agricultural news headlines coming your way now, courtesy in part of DTN. We'll begin with the weekly Kansas Crop Progress and Condition Report out from the USDA. Sharing the topsoil moisture supplies, as of this past weekend, 23% surplus, 60% adequate, and 17% short to very short. Subsoil moisture in the state, 16% surplus and 67% adequate, 17% short to very short. The condition of the winter wheat crop in Kansas this week is called 48% good to excellent, 38% fair, and 14% poor to very poor, according to the USDA. Well, apart from all the mayhem out there, it's best to keep in mind that this is National Agriculture Day, Tuesday, March the 24th, 2020. USDA Secretary Sonny Perdue offers his message on this occasion.
Today, as we celebrate National Ag Day, you know that we do so in very uncertain times. And during these times, one thing has remained steadfast, and that's America's farmers, ranchers, and producers. For the past half century, National Ag Day has played a key role in helping the American public understand where their food and fiber comes from and how important agriculture is to our national economy. Our farmers, ranchers, foresters, producers in America are feeding and clothing the world. Now more than ever, it's important that the American people remember that for all the food on those grocery shelves, that some farmer grew it. Our farmers are resilient. And during these uncertain times, they're still working day in and day out to produce what's needed for our growing population. Food is essential all year round, but in the face of a pandemic, it's critical the shelves remain stocked and supplies remain plentiful. President Trump's whole-of-government approach is ensuring food and essentials are constantly available. America's farmers and ranchers and those on the front lines in the food service industry are doing their part, and we are forever grateful. Today on National Ag Day, I challenge you, the American public, to keep our farmers, ranchers, and producers on their minds for all their work to provide us a safe, healthy, and abundant food supply. We owe them a great debt of gratitude. Thank you all, and stay safe out there.
USDA Secretary Sonny Perdue. Now, virtual webinars and social media offerings are among the methods of celebration for this 2020 edition of National Ag Day. The USDA's Rod Bain has more.
2020 National Ag Day celebrations this week will be a virtual affair.
National Ag Day. These are some things that I think apply not only to advocating, not only to talking to professionals, but apply to your everyday life.
Jason Wetzler overseeing the first of several webinars sponsored by the Agriculture Council of America and National FFA. In addition, Ag Day supporters are encouraging use of social media to explain the importance of agriculture in providing food, feed, and fiber in our daily lives through videos, photos, and narratives, such as the National Ag Day video essay produced by Texas's Samantha Gurgis.
The toothpaste contains sorbitol. The gas for your car is ethanol, which is corn-derived oil. That shirt you're wearing is cotton. That pencil you're working with is made out of wood. And those eggs you were eating are from chickens.
Agriculture is the backbone of our nation.
I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
Elsewhere in the headlines today, the USDA's Food Safety and Inspection Service has unveiled a host of changes in the U.S. export library for meat products to China, reflecting the terms of the Phase 1 agreement. Most of the actions detailed by FSIS involve the moves made by China to remove the age limit on beef and the setting of maximum residue limits on beef hormones. The guidance also reminded exporters are urged to work closely with their importers regarding Chinese standards of meat and poultry products intended for export to China. Meantime, China has indicated it will move away from a nationwide ban on imports of U.S. poultry should the U.S. experience a case of avian influenza, another component of the Phase 1 agreement between the two countries. Coming your way next on Agriculture Today, the weekly feature for you dairy producers from the Animal Sciences and Industry Department at K-State. Milk Lines with K-State dairy specialist Mike Brook. Mike?
Today I want to visit with our Kansas dairy farmers concerning the performance of robotic milking systems and some things we might need to consider if we're moving that way on our farm. One of the critical things that we need to consider when we think about robotic milking systems is really the amount of milk that each robot harvests each day. To be financially sound, we generally have to harvest at least 5,000 pounds of milk per robot per day, and actually move into 6,000 or even 7,000 pounds is possible with some of the newer equipment, and in some cases we could even move above the 7,000 pound mark. As we move above those marks, it makes it easier to foot the bill, so to speak, that we have when we purchase this type of equipment. So as we think about moving that bar forward and moving it higher, what do we need to think about? Well, a couple of things you need to think about is, well, number one, the average amount of milk per head that's being produced on the farm, and then the number of animals that are running through each robot each day. See, with the equipment, particularly older equipment, we would generally figure about 180 milkings a day, but today, some of our newer equipment, we may see as many as 210 milkings each day. That gives us some additional flexibility to milk a few more cows through that system, and then also harvest more milk per robot. However, there's a critical cow comfort issue that we need to address. If the barn was only designed for about 50 animals per robot, we may only have 50 free stalls in that pen. So putting in a machine that can milk more than that without adding some additional free stall space just simply adds to the overcrowding of the pen. So now maybe we only have 50 beds, but we're trying to put 65 cows in that pen. Will that give us the same relative milk production per cow as if we did not overcrowd the stalls? Probably not. We've been doing this in conventional barns for a long time. So as you look ahead and you think about maybe adopting robotic milking on your dairy farm, there's some critical design questions that need to be asked about your expectation for milk yield, your expectation for milk harvested per robot per day, and then matching the right number of stalls behind those robots to reflect what we would need in terms of cow comfort to achieve those higher levels of milk production. This is Mike Brook with K-State Research and Extension, encouraging our dairy farmers that might be moving toward robotic milking to consider cow comfort and how that might work in with their design plans for robotic milking.
All right, Mike, many thanks to you. And we'll return shortly with more. You're tuned to Agriculture Today.
With the shortage of primary care physicians, especially in rural areas, health education and disease prevention are vital. K-State Research and Extension programs address quality of life, personal development, and health behaviors across all life stages of all social economic groups. To learn more about health education, one of K-State Research and Extension's 5 grand challenges, visit www.ksre.ksu.edu.
Agriculture Today is back now, and it's time for our weekly wildlife management segment. Aboard via phone is Charlie Lee, wildlife specialist, K-State Research and Extension. Charlie, you bring to us today information from a new study on the cost-effectiveness of using livestock guardian dogs as protection against predators, particularly in the case of sheep. But these losses that we see to predators along this line are pretty hefty, aren't they?
Yes. Information from Department of Agriculture shows that coyotes are responsible for the highest percentage of losses of any of the predators. And that's about 54% of the sheep losses and 63% of the lamb losses nationally. So that's a significant number of animals that are lost. And sheep operations have always looked at a wide suite of tools, including lethal and non-lethal depredation tools to solve the problems. We've talked many times about lethal control techniques, including aerial hunting, spring-activated sodium cyanide devices or M44 devices, foothold traps, snares, poisons. But research has showed that lethal control of coyote populations is seldom practiced at a high enough intensity level to reduce coyote populations over large areas for a long period of time. The improved reproductive success and pup survival has been well documented as occurring when we have significant population reductions. So the coyote population very quickly resumes their original levels. So producers are always looking for non-lethal control. And in California, there are some counties that have selected to quit funding lethal control that's been practiced by USDA Wildlife Services, and then use those savings to initiate a cost-share program with ranchers who wanted to begin switching over to non-lethal tools, which primarily is improved fencing and purchasing livestock guardian dogs. So this particular research report focused on the cost-effectiveness of that type of an approach.
This was out of the University of California, Davis, you tell us. How did they go after what they were seeking here, that is, measuring the cost-effectiveness of employing guardian dogs?
Well, the Hopland Research and Extension Center has about 500 breeding ewes. That flock was studied from 2013 through 2017. Most university research stations collect data, so they had good information available. They were not relying on survey information, so they had actual costs associated with livestock guardian dogs and the operation of their facility. And they increased the number of livestock guardian dogs that they were utilizing and compared the sheep losses pre-livestock guardian dogs to post and come up with a value. It was somewhat surprising in that the average predation losses prior to incorporating livestock guardian dogs on the research center were about 11% per year. After the livestock guardian dog period, the lamb predation losses dropped to 6.9% a year. And there are some assumptions with that, and that's assuming that all of those improvements were a direct result of livestock guardian dog. So they used a value of about $1.50 per pound for lamb price, and then estimated those savings from reduced lamb predation to be about $2,400 during that study period.
But the other side of the equation here is, what does it cost to operate those guardian dogs? And there is, in fact, some expense involved there, you say.
Yes, there's certainly an expense involved. We've got the initial investment to purchase the dogs. At this particular site, the average cost of the dogs purchased was $780. I see livestock guardian dog puppies from $200 to $400, quite often advertised for sale. Then you have not only the initial cost, you've got the variable costs that are required to maintain the dogs each year. That includes things, as you would expect, like dog feed, veterinarian costs, replacement costs, and labor costs that are associated with feeding, caring, and training livestock guardian dogs.
So how do those costs then compare to those savings you just mentioned in the form of reducing sheep losses?
Well, their data suggested that the use of 5 livestock guardian dogs reduced lamb and ewe loss to coyote predation by 43% and 25%, respectively, for a total savings of $16,000 over 7 years. However, they found that the cost, which included the acquisition and the maintenance expenses, exceed the benefits of that investment over that 7-year useful life of a livestock guardian dog by $13,400. So their conclusion was that ranchers that are interested in the adoption of livestock guardian dogs as a practice, that they may only be cost-effective for certain types of operation, mainly those areas where livestock guardian dogs are able to achieve high rates of predator protection efficiency at a low cost of maintenance.
So what does one draw from that guardian dogs can be part of the answer, if you will, to coyote predation, in this case on sheep, but not, as you would say, a panacea?
Yeah, I think that captures it very well. Livestock guardian dogs can be part of the tools, but be prepared that in some cases that's not going to completely limit the problems with predators. I'd encourage producers to think about other non-lethal techniques, including improving fencing, but keep in mind lethal control may be necessary as they move forward.
Well, those might be termed unexpected conclusions from a study out of the University of California, Davis on the costs and returns to using guardian dogs to protect livestock. Charlie, we appreciate the overview of this. As always, Charlie Lee, Wildlife Specialist, K-State Research and Extension. With that, our Tuesday edition comes to a close. Thanks for listening in. And please rejoin us here tomorrow, won't you? Until then, Eric Atkinson for Agriculture Today. This is the K-State Radio Network.